Do you work in areas of adoption? Do you work in areas that are maybe not,
So not particularly adoption, but our practice, what sets our firm apart from others is that we give clients the opportunity to resolve their disputes in different ways. So we have 3 different ways in which we resolve disputes. One way is through mediation. Another way is through collaborative law. And then the last is the traditional litigation.
Finding the right strategic partners when you're trying to serve your clients at the highest level, sometimes not easy. But how do you filter the professionals? Do you have any thoughts that you might want to share with folks about what your discovery looks like with other professionals before you bring them into the fold of working with one of your clients?
Sure. It's a process, and it's not just when we meet at a dinner party or a cocktail party. There's a lot more to it, and oftentimes I will have a lunch with them. I'll speak with them, meet with them. It's usually at least 4 to 5 meetings before I feel comfortable enough. Yeah.
If you have collaborative attorneys from your firm working on a case and it falls apart, can they use other attorneys in your firm, or they have to go outside of the firm?
They would have to go outside of the firms.
Do you find over the years that prenups and post-marriage agreements, have those been on the rise?
Absolutely, and what's interesting is,
does it make it easy? Because I know people still contest those and still try to change them, but has it made also the divorce process easier?
It has, because it eliminates issues. So like I said earlier, the only thing that a prenuptial agreement cannot include is custody or child support issues. So if we have a situation where there's a prenuptial agreement and everybody's on board with it, it cuts down on what really has to be resolved.
So we're talking about 5 minutes with Freed. You do these very small couple of minute segments with other high-level professionals to share who they are and what they do, and in turn, you get to know them.
Correct. I mean, basically, it's really 5 quick questions. What do? You know that I'm a matrimonial and family law attorney. When would my clients most often require your services? What are the challenges that you face in your area of work? And the 4th question is, what's the best way to reach you? And those 4 questions themselves that's the core of what we do when we network. And when I go to a networking meeting, I want to know who I'm talking to, how our work is intertwined in any way, how they experience their job, and normally I would get a business card from them, or in the old days, a business card. But that's what I couldn't do in person. So that was the basis for the show. And then the last question that we developed was a question of the week, which is a fun hypothetical question. You're on a deserted island. You can only bring 3 things with you. What would you bring and why? So each show has a different question of the week, and it's a thought-provoking question. And so I try to keep it within 5 to 6 minutes, and it's been really great. It's generated. I mean, yes, it's great, generated business, but that wasn't really the purpose. The purpose really was to get out and to meet people, to build my network around me. And I think I have, because I can just scroll through the list of my guests, and if I need an estate attorney, I have 5 or 6 or something like that. So it's really helped me build my network, which I think is most important.
So when we first started talking about that during COVID, lockdown in New York, nobody was in person. ARG, right, the organization Bruce and I run, wasn't able to meet in person. So we did a lot of virtual, meetings. And it was the perfect way, right, to start something new on a platform and using a tool that was still, brand new to most people. But it's all about the relationship, right, which is what we talk about here a lot. You had one guest early on, lasagna. It was the funniest, right? I just say yes. Lasagna, you know exactly who I'm talking about, and yes. That episode. Do you remember what number it was?
It was actually number 1. And I will say the first episode, there was never another episode like episode 1, because my son had created an opening, like an introduction, of basically me getting ready for work, and I'm walking down the stairs, and I have my tie, I got my dress shirt, And the only difference is that as I'm walking down, I'm basically in shorts because it's COVID time. So that was the only time that aired. And yes, it was Rosalia Labate, and she was my number one. And she came up with a great tagline about lasagna. And
Well, leave it
memorable.
like that. People should just go watch it because it's really, it's fun.
It's a memorable episode, I will say
Yes.
that.
So, Michael, we've known you for a lot of years. And like you said, you're a family and matrimonial attorney, which is so much more than uncoupling, right? It involves so many other aspects of our family dynamics. And maybe you just want to talk a little bit about the value, right? It's not just about uncoupling.
Oh, there's a lot more to what I do, and I say that because I feel like I admire all different lawyers in all different areas. It's a difficult job, but I guess what I do is a little bit more advanced because I'm wearing many different hats. So I'm part economist, accountant, financial advisor, psychologist, referee, all rolled into one. And so it's always, I find, the most difficult area of the law. And I've spoken to other attorneys about this who have said, there's no way I'm going to get even close to doing what you do. It's too much. Talking to my colleagues and partners, and it's like we can only talk. We're the only ones that can really relate to this. I try to talk to my wife about it, although I usually don't like talking about my cases because I've already lived through it during the day.
Sure.
So it's there's a lot of emotion. People are at their worst, and it's not like you're going to court for a corporation and you may never see the people. These people that you live every day through their lives, and it's difficult. But we try to do is I just try to get through the day, and I have a lot of empathy for my clients going through what they are going through, because it's not only just it's impacting their lives. It's really, if there's children involved, it's impacting others, and it goes on for generations. This is not just an isolated, okay, you're getting divorced, we'll move on next year. This is impacting many people's lives.
And you said, people are at their worst. Many times that's true, but they're also at their most vulnerable, right? So helping folks not make bad decisions, such a heightened emotional moment. I have to think sometimes is, like you said, you wear so many hats, but beyond the legal aspects, trying to, help people stay grounded and, do what's in the best interest of their children and their future with their children. Sometimes it's very hard to see that.
I will say, and it goes back to building your network, because, like the saying is, it takes a village. It takes a village for somebody to get divorced, because while I do wear a lot of different hats, I don't profess to be an accountant or to be a financial advisor.
Right.
And many times I'm bringing in these professionals to assist me, and I'm the point person. So I'm always, to my client, the most important person, and the trust, and he or she has trust in me to make the right choices as to who to bring onto this team. And I've had instances where I've done a Zoom with a client where I've had 4 or 5 professionals on with me, my team. I've had estate attorneys, I've had accountants, I've had financial advisors, people that will support me in guiding the client to ultimately to making a determination as to how to resolve their case.
Sure. When it comes to those other professional relationships, Bruce and I talk about what that looks like for decades. And you're somebody that does it really, really well. Finding the right strategic partners when you're trying to serve your clients at the highest level, sometimes not easy, especially if it's a client with a need that is out of the ordinary.
Right.
How do you filter? And I know it comes from building long-standing, deep, meaningful relationships, but how do you filter the professionals? Do you have any thoughts that you might want to share with folks about what your discovery looks like with other professionals before you bring them into the fold of working with one of your clients?
Sure. It's a process, and it's not just when we meet at a dinner party or a cocktail party. There's a lot more to it. And oftentimes I will have a lunch with them. I'll speak with them, meet with them. It's usually at least 4 to 5 meetings before I feel comfortable enough to refer somebody like that. It's I take great pride in it because, again, I'll go back to the fact that, there's so much pressure here in what we do, that we have to make the right decision as to who we're going to bring along to help us. And so there's a lot of different variables that go along with it, because I know, at least I can tell you off the top of my head, 5 to 10 accountants I would recommend, but not every accountant fits the case that I'm working on. Sometimes there's a financial component to it where they can't afford maybe person A because they're just too expensive, or in terms of personality. And that goes to when I meet these professionals, I get a sense of who they are, and I can tell that this person would not mesh with this person. So it's a variety of different factors that I look at. If I'm referring somebody, I take a lot of time to think about whether that person is the right fit, because they could be the smartest person in the world, but they may not have the bedside manner that's needed for a certain client. Other clients don't need that bedside manner. They just need the answer. And so it takes knowing your client and knowing the professional to make that connection.
Absolutely. I think I've heard Bruce say it for a very long time. I know I share it with folks too. You're not for everyone, right? Everyone is not for everyone, which is why when we talk about professionals, we usually share a few folks with somebody. And when we're helping a professional with another professional that they're in need of for a client, we want to hear about the client.
Yes.
And then we can help direct, which one of our people would be a really good fit. And which they're not a good fit for. And it's all of those things and probably 10 or 15 other discovery items, right, that go into the decision of which is the best professional.
Of course.
And so, but you do more than just divorce, right? The pre-wedding documentation. Do you work in areas of adoption? Do you work in areas that are maybe not?
So not particularly adoption, but our practice, what sets our firm apart from others is that we give clients the opportunity to resolve their disputes in different ways. So we have 3 different ways in which we resolve disputes. One way is through mediation. Another way is through collaborative law. And then the last is the traditional litigation course of action. And that's what I specialize in myself. I am trained as a litigator. I do depositions, trials. Doesn't mean I don't settle my cases. Of course, the first 95% of our cases do settle. And so I do everything in my power to settle the case. But if I can't, then I don't hesitate to litigate. I don't do mediation and collaborative law. I'm not a kumbaya. I never really did that. I don't know if that's a good thing or whatever, but I never really had the patience for mediation. But I do envy them, people that do mediate. And I have partners that do mediation and collaborative law.
So I'm pretty sure I know what mediation is. I'm pretty sure most professionals I work with would understand mediation, but I have not heard the term collaborative law. So maybe you can educate me.
Yeah.
You folks may be interested as well. What is collaborative law?
So collaborative law is an alternative dispute resolution process where each party has their own collaborative attorney, and just like the word collaborating, they work together to try to come to a resolution. It's a little different. I'll just distinguish for a moment between collaborative law and mediation. So mediation, you have one mediator who doesn't represent either party, but's there to basically build a bridge to get the parties to say yes. And normally in the mediation, each party will have an attorney, basically a consulting attorney, to help during the mediation, as well as once there's an agreement prepared. Since a mediator doesn't represent either one of them, the consulting attorney reviews the agreement to make sure it fits and it's done correctly for their client. So that's mediation. The difference in collaborative law is that both parties are represented by a collaborative attorney, and their collaborative attorneys are trained to work together to come to a resolution. And the biggest distinction with collaborative law, as in terms of then litigation, is if for some reason the collaborative process does not work, then that collaborative attorney cannot represent the client in litigation. And so and the reason being is that there's incentive for everybody to resolve their case through collaborative law, because then you're going to end up having a new attorney and you're basically reinventing the wheel, having to take the time to then learn the case. So it does put a little bit of pressure on the clients to try to resolve, because they don't want to have to then get a new attorney, go into the litigation process.
Sure.
So again, those three processes are, there are some firms that matrimonial firms that only do litigation. There are some matrimonial firms that only do mediation or collaborative law. We do all three. And we give options so that a client has the option. Now, a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I really want to mediate. Okay. But if once I hear that there's been domestic violence, or that just, one party is so overwhelming, that their personalities don't mesh, I'll tell them you could do it, but my advice would be not to, because of the strife between the two of you, or the fact that maybe your wife or your husband is a little more assertive, because attorneys aren't in the mediation. Even if you have a consulting attorney, that consulting attorney doesn't go with the client to the mediation. The clients are alone with the mediator. The consulting attorney consults before and after the mediation.
I didn't know that exists. So a follow-up question.
Yeah.
If you have collaborative attorneys from your firm working on a case and it falls apart, can they use other attorneys in your firm, or they have to go outside of the firm?
They would have to go outside of the firm, so there's no conflict, because ultimately the consulting attorney would have confidential information about both parties. So, I've never come across it. I'm wondering out loud if they can sign a waiver of the conflict. I don't think so. It's just it's not a good practice to have somebody, in those cases, and that's why I network with matrimonial attorneys, because there are times.
Makes a lot of sense.
There are times that we get conflicted out of the case, or vice versa. So I've been referred by other matrimonial. The best referrals I've ever gotten, besides from other matrimonial attorneys, is from clients, but also people that if I represented the wife and the husband recommends me. That's not when I know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, we've had that previously. One of our litigators in the organization was a new member. I think they were in the organization a couple of months, and a member saw them at a meeting and came to me and said, so-and-so, I can't believe he's here. He is the best litigator. And I was like, oh, so have you worked with him? He said, no, I was on the other side. He buried us.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said he was remarkable, and I was in awe of him. And I swore if I ever needed a litigator, that's who I would use. So I understand when you find somebody good, right? And you've had the experience of being on the wrong side, maybe.
Exactly.
But that's interesting. Prenups, somebody's thinking about getting married, what that looks like in all its parts and pieces, either the first time or the second time, or maybe even beyond that. There's a lot of complex relationships that have to be sorted out, right? Oh,
of course. And we do a lot of prenups. This is actually, I would say, from about January to April is like the hottest time for prenuptial agreements, because people are getting married during the summer. Right. We're very busy doing that. And so, but there are instances when people say, I want to do a prenup, and I'll get a call like, okay, getting married in 4 days. You think we can do that? I would say, well, it is humanly possible. I just won't do it, because there's too much of a fear that there's going to be, pressure, and somebody's going to feel like they're under pressure and duress. And then if they don't like the terms down the road, they'll try to set it aside. So what I tell people in those instances is, okay, let's do a postnuptial agreement, which is something that could be done after you get married. But yeah, we do a lot of prenuptial and postnuptial agreements, and they deal with specifically the division of assets, equitable distribution, as well as support. The old term was alimony. It's now called maintenance. We can't do child support or custody, but yeah, we do a great deal of prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. And And then there's even, besides the typical, the divorce and the prenuptial agreements, when people are married and they have children in common and they're looking for custody or support, we handle those cases, but they're in the family court. So they're called family court cases, because divorce only happens in the Supreme Court, which is our lowest court in New York. The family court only deals with support custody cases for unmarried individuals. And then there's also orders of protection, unfortunately, when there's domestic violence, and that's either in the family court or the Supreme Court.
Do you find in over the years that prenups and post-marriage agreements, have those been on the rise?
Absolutely. What's interesting is most of the time I get the referral from a parent that maybe I've represented in their divorce, and now their children are getting married. And what commonly happens in these situations is that the parent tries to basically steer the meetings and the consultation. And I'm like, sir, I represent you. I'm going to represent your child here. I really need their input. I've had a few instances where in a consultation, the child's not even speaking. I call them child, but they're in their
The adult
20s or
children,
the
right.
adult children.
The adult children.
Right. And they won't speak at all because, again, this is coming from people get prenuptial agreements when there's family money. So oftentimes, the parents have a vested interest in making sure that the assets that they work so hard to acquire are protected when their children get married. So I get a lot of cases where parents come along for the consultation. So yes, I get between that and if somebody has a business that they want to protect, or they have substantial assets that they acquired before the marriage, they'll want a prenuptial agreement. But it's definitely been on the rise. I would say I'm practicing 29 years already. I would say over the past 10 or 15 years, there's been a dramatic rise in prenuptial and postnuptial agreements.
Does it make it easy? Because I know people still contest those and still try to change them. But has it made also the divorce process easier?
It has. It has, because it eliminates issues. So, like I said earlier, the only thing that a prenuptial agreement cannot include is custody or child support issues. So, if we have a situation where there's a prenuptial agreement and everybody's on board with it, it cuts down on what really has to be resolved. Yeah. So I think it's great, and I will. I mean, there are instances where people come and they want a prenuptial agreement, and I'll tell them they really don't need it.
Yeah.
Or there'll be instances in which I'll tell them this is a case where you really need to protect the assets, and most people really don't have an understanding of the whole process, because when somebody gets married, they say, oh, well, I've had this account forever, it's mine. It's like, no, it's not yours. It's marital. And that's a very hard concept for them to understand, that something that's in their name is going to end up being divided. Sure. And so it's when we have these consultations, people get enlightened, and they understand that, what's mine is not mine, and what's hers or his is not theirs.
Right. There's such a large number of people culturally that go through a divorce at least once, that it's not really an uncommon conversation anymore. It's fairly common. So the premarital documentation it only seems reasonable, right? Given the statistics. When they're two young people, maybe just out of college, they don't really have an income yet, or they have a marketplace entry income, right? And neither one owns anything. There is no trust fund. There is no, there's no large amount of assets anywhere, and they're starting almost at a level playing field. Do they need a prenup?
No, and it's funny because like I said, there are times I've talked people out of it, and I'm the perfect example. So my wife and I, we were married at 28 years old, and if anybody would have needed a prenup, it would have been my wife, because I had nothing, and I was working as like a first year associate. I was so excited. I was making $22,000 a year. This is 1998. And I couldn't have been happier. And my wife was, had assets from before before the marriage. And, I mean, we never ended up doing a prenuptial agreement, but, looking back on it, if anybody would have done it, it would have been her, because I had nothing. I didn't have any, no, I didn't even have a car. I leased my car. I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. Oh, wait, no, I had debt.
You had debt that you
I
brought
had,
to the marriage. How exciting.
it's the least I could do to my wife is bring debt to the marriage. So I had student loans.
That happens a lot, right? Where there's student loans and there's debt that comes into a marriage that should be considered, right? Somebody
Yes.
comes in with medical school debt, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Actually, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars for an undergraduate degree these days.
Right.
But if they come into the marriage with that, there should be an understanding of how that's getting paid back.
Of
Right.
course. And yeah, it's much easier to have everything in place in a prenuptial agreement. And the beauty of a prenuptial agreement is that there are instances in which you can go outside of the law. And so people do what's called a title controls agreement. Now, under the law, like I said, if you acquire an asset, a title is irrelevant. So it doesn't matter that it's in my name. But you can do an agreement, a prenuptial agreement, and say, okay, the day after we get married, anything that's in my name, even after I acquire it during the marriage, will stay my separate property and can't be distributed. And the only thing that will be considered as marital property is anything we put in joint names. Okay. So that's a title controls agreement. It's not what we call tracking the law. So you could do a tracks the law agreement, or you can do a title controls, which goes totally outside of the law.
Sure. But it makes sense in many cases. So I guess the takeaway for all of this is if you're considering getting married, sit down and have a conversation with Michael.
Yes,
To know, right?
but this is also it's a good thing. So most of the time people come to me, it's all doom and gloom, they're upset, they're getting divorced. But this is actually the nice part of things.
Sure.
And there's nothing that you should be ashamed about in terms of getting a prenuptial agreement, because you want to make sure that, number one, you're protecting your own assets, but also number two, you're also taking care of your spouse and working out an agreement so that you're not going to incur counsel fees down the road in a divorce, and that you're going to try to work things out fairly. And fairly is the most important thing, because you never want to do a prenuptial agreement which is entirely one-sided. I remember there was a movie about, I forgot who was in it, but they talked about this ironclad prenuptial agreement. I mean, there's no such thing. And if it's totally one-sided, you're really subject to getting it overturned because it's so one-sided. So you want to be as fair as possible to your spouse. And so I think it's a great idea. But again, it's only for people that really need it. Sometimes, like you gave me that example, just getting out of school, no assets, there's no reason to do a prenuptial agreement.
But there's also, this is the example you just gave, right? Where each individual party is going to retain ownership of their assets, right? Property, maybe real property. Then this is where I could see your trust and estate attorney, right? Your financial advisor, how that all plays in, and why you really need a team of people to go through, because when you have children together, who are you leaving what to, right?
That's right.
It's not marital assets, so it's not a joint estate, right? It's now separate estates, separate ownership, titled separately. Who's leaving what to whom, right?
Yeah.
So there are and as we get older, we acquire more pennies and more toys. And at the end of the day, sometimes that gets complicated. So
it does. It does.
So grateful that you spent some time with us and
this was great.
Some of the things that you do. This entire thing is educational and hoping to just inform folks and give resources when people are in need of high-level professionals, which you absolutely are.
Thank you. This is a great vehicle for getting your name out there. I highly recommend that people do it in our group, because it really it's a great exercise, and I applaud you and Bruce for it. It's great.
Oh, thank you. How long have you been with ARG now? 8 years?
I started in 2019, so yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's been about 8 years.
Yeah, almost 8 years.
7.5, 8 years.
7.5, yeah.
Well, we're always grateful for you and happy to have you as part of what we consider extended family. So
Well, thank you.
yeah, enjoy.
Thank you.